Well, hello, everybody. Good evening and a very happy Tuesday to all of you. Well, I'm trying a thing tonight. Only time will tell if the thing actually works out. But at the moment, it looks like it might be. So, some of you who have been here with me for a little bit have seen that I was getting some fiber optics set up. So that way I could actually stream to various things, and I have done so. So now we are live across multiple platforms, across multiple things to bring you independent author stories. Because what could be better than reading some fantastic books by some fantastic authors that you've never heard of? We are in the middle of Tellafrog by Torin MacRath. So if you have missed some of the previous readings, we are starting on chapter 7 tonight, by the way. So if you've missed some of the previous readings, they are available on YouTube and Rumble for your listening pleasure. But if not, hey, I'm here with you. We're going to read into chapter 7, and you can start here. There's nothing wrong with it. You can also find out more about this fantastic indie author at his website, Tellafrog.com, or you can also check him out on Amazon because, hey, most authors are on Amazon, right? I know he is. So let's talk a little bit about what happened last week. I say last week, it was Tuesday. So we started out with an inspection of the prison by a Raylanu, and they really didn't find anything down there that might have been a source of concern for why his father was getting sick. But, and I can't remember the other guy's name at the moment. It'll come to me when I read it to you. Um, the other gentleman noticed that there was a strange root down there that looked odd. And so they kind of called it out. Hello, Showbiz Pizza Collector. Good evening. And they also decided that they needed to talk to the priest who had been inspecting the prison, because that also was going to be important to do. So that's what we are looking at here from chapter 5. Chapter 6, they came back up, weren't able to discover much, went a little bit into Raylanu's past and some things that he learned from his family, and unfortunately, his father passed away from the illness. That is how we ended up chapter 6. So we'll be jumping into chapter 7 to start everything this evening as we learn more about Raylanu, about the illness that's going on, and how they are going to work at this and try to counteract it. So, wherever you happen to be, if you're in a hot place, get a cold drink. If you're in a cold place, get yourself a hot drink. Sit back, relax, put your feet up, grab a blanket if the mood so fits you, and prepare to enjoy as we dive in, starting on chapter 7 of Tellafrog this evening. A reminder, I do record all of these, so I will not engage while the chapter is going on, but I will be happy to chat with you guys after the chapter is done, or you are always welcome to chat with each other, because that is always good. So, here we go. Let's get started in chapter 7. For the first half of my life, I suffered from practically uncontrollable fits when traveling through new, uncharted lands, with a wild desire to drop everything of this world's modern facade and run as hard and as fast as possible away from it into the arms of God's unblemished creation. I learned, after one of these events appeared to those in my company to be a seizure, to control it. I treated it like a coy dog, always on a leash, its snout brushing my feet as I walked through life, but always right nearby, urging me to abandon human civilization and run with it. I couldn't rid myself of this feral dog because it was part of me. maybe a bigger part of me than I wanted to admit. However, with practice in the solitary wilderness I frequented, I could feel its pestering approaching, and could stomp my boot heel on the rope I had mentally tethered to it, snapping its imaginary head to the ground and controlling myself. But right now, I really desired to let it off the leash and chase it into oblivion, away from the pain welling up inside me over my father. It wasn't just very close. It was breathing hot, moist breath on my neck. I could almost decipher the sounds as words bidding me to run away. But for my mother, I might have. I heard a bit of ruckus upstairs. I could tell Mother was moving around, so I went back up and peeked in. She had his blanket off and his nightshirt unbuttoned, with a towel over his particulars, working the jar and her wand over him. She turned slightly, aware that someone was present, and saw me. "Oh, please, Renlanu, come in. Would you look at this?" she said nervously, yet quietly. I came the rest of the way through the door and shut it behind me. Coming to Mother's side, there was something different happening to the infection. The black branches and lines were receding. They were retracting ever so slowly. She was storing all of the motion in her original jar, not a new one, so I asked about it. "Son, is something you were told to look into. It may not be something we need to give the ranger yet. I made his jar a few moments ago, and as I was finishing the final parts of the spell, I watched the branches getting smaller, so I switched to the aura jar for the professor." She completed the task and handed me the jar for the ranger. "Let him know I will prepare for the burial, and let me be, if you don't mind, son," she said. "Mama, what does it mean?" I asked, watching her and trying to tell if I could discern anything out of the ordinary. "Nothing." "I have never heard of this before, magic or ordinary, cursed or infected. Whatever it is, I may try and extract a bit to cordon off in another jar for you to take with you as well. When I tried to do it before, it really hurt Daddy. It won't now. I definitely don't want it to go anywhere else. I will stay up here and do this work. Son, head down and put some dinner together for our guests." "Yes, ma'am. Love you, Mom." "Love you too. Dad is with God now. We must carry on." She never stopped working, looking straight at wherever her wand was working, so I went back out into the hallway and closed the door. I went down and began rustling around in the pantry. Honestly, not much, but I wasn't surprised. It occurred to me that today is a day I would greatly appreciate a magically prepared dinner. I went out front and asked for help, and those turkeys had already set a table and were finishing up a great pot of chili, accompanied by sourdough biscuits, carrots, and green beans on the side. What great people! I said a quick prayer of thanks, asking God to welcome my father. He would want me to tend to the things that must be done. So I went around and got feed and water for the animals to put out, and took the gray wolf a big bowl of chili, rubbing him on the head. He understood what had happened and stared at me with his big yellow eyes. It was the only time in my life I witnessed a wolf look sad. Mostly, they look at you like they're deciding whether they'll eat better if they let you bring them food, or if they should go ahead and eat you now. I gave him a good rub and headed back outside. I set the table. Oh, they also had sweet tea with chipped ice in a pitcher, so I poured myself a glass. "She all right, son?" Barthou asked. I nodded. "She is preparing the jar for you and getting him ready for burial. She has to be alone until it's time." "Your parents are some of the best, most decent Christian magical folk in all the country of Texas, son. It has been a great honor to have known them all these years. Perhaps you don't know this, but your daddy wrote me a letter saying how trustworthy I was back when I was only a hired hand around this territory. It's how I ended up going into fetching rascally wizards. When nobody volunteered to catch a fellow who'd cursed a banker after getting too much water in him, I did, and brought him here. After a couple more with no conflagrations arising, he recommended me be badged. And that was that. He filled a bowl, plopped a biscuit on top, and sat across from me. Artyrus, still amazed and trying to hide his being baffled by everything he sees and tastes, also sits and begins his first bowl of Texas chili. After a few minutes, he gets a big drink of tea and, upright in posture, dabs his mouth properly with his napkin and says, "From what native animal is the meat in the chili?" Barthou chuckles a bit, and I smile and keep eating. I knew when I opened the door what meat it was. I don't know why he likes it so much, but I'll let him explain. "Armadillo tail," Barthou says, and waits, smiling bigger in anticipation. "What's an armadillo?" Artyrus asks. "Well, son, it's a little critter who is all armored, see? Digs around in the dirt and leaves looking for worms and grubs." Barthou makes little digging and sniffing impressions with his hands and face. Then he taps the side of his head with his pointy finger. "They ain't too bright, don't see well, don't seem to hear well, and have big, strong tails they can whoop you with if you ain't careful." Artyrus looked bemused at first, but as Barthou continued, he began to show amused disbelief. "They have big old claws they dig with, a pointed little snoot they root around with for bugs." The whole time he is imitating the claws and pointy nose with his hands and face again. "The way I see it, there's so many of 'em about that once in a while, if in a pick real careful, I can get a big old fella, one who's had lots of little ones already. No harm in that. Plus, the tail meat is pretty darn good, ain't it?" Well, about halfway through the thorough explanation, he stopped and stared. The chances he had ever consumed the tail of an armored animal, who is half blind and deaf, who eats grubs is, well, 0. He thought, chewed a bit, and swallowed. "It is quite tasty, I will not deny it. But I feel you are amusing yourself with the description of this beast at my expense, sir." Barthou whipped out his wand, tapped in the air above the table, and a glowing likeness of an armadillo appeared. "How big are these creatures?" Artyrus asked, his eyes large and absorbing the image like a child at a zoo. "Oh, about 2 to 3 feet long, about 40 pounds big uns get. My daddy found a baby un once, raised it up for about 5 years till it passed on. It would sleep with him, but warn't worth spit for nothing. Dumb as all get out. Then would leap 6 feet straight up if you startled it," Bart recalled, chuckling as he shoveled up another big spoonful of chili. "Those are ordinary creatures, not magical?" Artyrus asked, still thinking we were pulling his leg. "Nah, just ordinary critters, like possums, skunks, coons, and the like," Barthou said, while chewing, which was a habit my mother had forbidden, causing me to tense up. Barthou did not have many opportunities to converse with people in the course of his duties, and was very grateful for the company. So I relented on my teeth gritting and chose instead to watch the enjoyment he had in explaining armadillos to a magical cavalry officer from Austria. After a few more chuckles and exchanges, Barthou had finished his bowl and, wiping his mouth on his sleeve, stood and finished his tea. "Raylan New, can you tell me if it's all right to get to carving your daddy's tomb after dinner?" he asked, taking another bite of biscuit while standing. "Certainly, sir. It would be a gift for us," I told him. It honestly would. I've attended funerals in Europe, South America, and several in Texas over the last 35 years. Too often here, as in any unsettled country, funeral proceedings can be Spartan. No fancy dress, no weeping lines of passers-by for an hour, no service in a medieval cathedral. Many times, It is nothing more than one decent person with time and ability who can drag up enough big rocks to keep bears and mountain lions, coyotes and foxes from dismembering the deceased. To have such good friends here, a proper burial will mean a great deal. We finished eating as Mother came out, clearly taking requisite time to compose herself for company. She looked at the meal, smiling gratefully, having to wipe a couple of squirrely tears that leaked out. "Only one thing is missing, boys." She waved her wand, and a steaming pan of peach cobbler appeared, accompanied by a big glass bowl of whipped, heavy, sweet cream. "A woman's touch is so easily overlooked by hard men, my lady," the ranger pointed out. "Thank you, ma'am. It has been a coon's age since I enjoyed a peach cobbler." That brought Barthou back to the bench. She joined us seated, and we heaped a mass of its magnificence on our plates, ignoring all mature manners. Often, ladies of the prairie here extract great pleasure from making irresistible food for hard-working men. Nothing wrong with this. We all enjoyed Mother's dessert together, with her great coffee. Barthou took out a crook-neck pipe, by the look of it handmade by himself out of bog oak with an ivory stem. He fired up a bowl of, to my special nose, was Southern Tennessee bright broadleaf, gently toasted, then stored in an old whiskey barrel. He stoked the bowl a few times, its aroma drifting around the table, and by its path, I assume a bit of enchantment on it as well, because it circled around us without irritating anyone. "Ma'am, can I ask if there's anything special I can inscribe on your husband's tomb?" Barthou said, slowly drawing on the pipe. She didn't hesitate. "John Tellafrog, veteran, husband, father, warden of Wormville Territorial Prison for 32 years. There wasn't an animal or plant he didn't love, and he cared for the least of magical folk the best he could." Barthou nodded as he enjoyed his pipe, eyes down at the table, thinking of what Mama had said about Father. I held the prison keys up for Barthou to take and put under his protection, which let Mama begin to release another weight. He took them, held the tip of his wand on the big ring that held all of them, and they began to glow bluish with a crackling sound. Then a bit of smoke fell off of them and dissipated. He put them in his inside coat pocket. "That he did, ma'am. That he did," Barthou said, nodding. "I will get to it before it gets dark on us. Thank you for the fine supper," he said, tipping his hat to her as he set it on his head. He walked over to the right of the house, by the goat pen I saw from around back earlier. "Mama, are you okay? Is Papa wrapped up where the ranger doesn't see it receding?" I asked. Yes, I am all right." The big smile again. "Your father lived 75 years, and I got 52 with him. He is wrapped up like a mummy, son. I duplicated the original ore jar and wrapped it with him. It is also said to absorb anything that may come off your father. The cheesecloth I have him in is tucked inside the jar. He is wrapped in a thick linen sheet over that. Whatever comes from it will end up in the sealed jar I put in your settled bag. The unchanging view jar I will give Mr. Corton," she said. "Your father held his smile. I know he is all right." "Nothing surprises me any more about you, Mama. You are great at everything," I said, cupping my hand over hers. We sat sipping our coffee in silence for a few more minutes, and Artira stood, asking, "May I go check if the professor is available in portrait?" Yes, dear." "May I also inform him of all that has happened, or would you like to?" "Oh, please do. I don't want to try talking more about it yet," Mom said. He gave his wand a wave, and the dishes and dinner were cleaned up, leaving the cobbler and coffee. Mom smiled. He went in the house. Mama, will you be all right if we set off tomorrow to determine what we can find out with Father Callius? I asked, ready to stay here indefinitely if she wants. Yes, son. I think I will ask the ranger to try and convince Pandos to stay with me up here, around the house. Basau said earlier that he plans to have a group from his troop come and move the prisoners tomorrow, probably. He has a day or two to protect our place and guard the prison from up here. I doubt he will stay. His self-imposed curse is strong, and he will go with the prisoners when they leave. She seemed content to stay busy with the tasks that needed to be done. I wouldn't dare ask anything else of her. It was nearly twilight now. The sun had gone below the horizon, and the west rim of our little ranch was bathed in a deep reddish-orange glow, as happens in the heat of late summer, with dust rising as the sun passed through it. We finished the cobbler, which was sweet and filling, and Mamma cleared up the last few dishes. Barthow's tent fluttered in a bit of a breeze, which always kicks up a bit after the sun's heat leaves the ground at a steep angle as it sets. The same wind rises as the sunlight creeps across the land from the east in the mornings, though in late summer the breeze rarely lingers. Barthow comes bow-legged around the corner and sits back down with us, still toking his pipe. It's all ready, Mother, whenever you are. He went right up to Mamma and put his big, coarse hand on her shoulder. Mamma, pursing her lips and trying to be strong, patted him on the hand for an unspoken thanks. Would you take a minute to speak to Bandos for me? Ask him if he would please come stay around the house for a day or two before he decides to leave with the prisoners. Of course, ma'am. Be right back, he said, setting off, fiddling with the keys a bit, and went on in. She wiped a couple of tears with her handkerchief and said, I am ready, son, as soon as he gets back, as long as you are. Yeah, I guess so, Mama. I nodded for a minute. A wolf cry, yipping and howling, echoed out of the prison, which was incredible, knowing how soundproof it was. Even Mother heard it a bit, and had to tend to tears again momentarily, dropping her head back with her mouth open. Bandos hadn't been told until now that Dad was gone. Just as I was easing into this state of dull acceptance, it was now starting for Bandos. He yipped for a whole minute, then it went quiet. A few more minutes, and both Bandos and Barthow came out together. Bandos went straight to Mamma and leaned on her, circling back and forth. Mom turned on the bench and set her legs outside, and he sat down facing her, and slowly rose to put his front paws on her shoulders, and they hugged as best as Bandos could manage. I was very relieved he had agreed to stay with her. I know, my friend, I know. Thank you for staying with me a few days. It means everything. She rubbed his neck, and he sat down, whimpered once, and lay at her feet. All right, gentlemen, let's lay John to rest. He has earned it. She stood, and as did Bandos, and we all went around back. McCourt came and lit on a tree in front of us. Mom and Dad's owls were already there. Beyond the garden and the grassy area, before the monoliths closed in, Barthow had created an obsidian tomb, glistening in the now overhead moonlight. It was 6 feet tall, 8 feet wide, and about 6 feet deep. It depicted probably 100 scenes in rows about 4 inches tall, which wrapped around the whole lot of it. Far too many for me to count right now. The figures were so intricate, so detailed, that even from 10 feet away, I could tell the carvings were of my father and his life. The corners were as pillars, wound with ivy leaves. In the center, facing us, was our family crest, surrounded by our family tree. It was breathtaking, and Mama leaned on me while she saw it. I had seen many tombs in incredible monasteries and castles in my day. However, I had never truly seen anything this impressive. Talent sometimes lies in the most peculiar containers. Basau, I... My lord, Mamma tried, but tears of joy were mixed with her sad ones. Sir, every noble I have ever encountered would pay you whole chests of gulden for such a craftwork. Artyrus stood in awe as well. Well, folks, that's all real flattering, but they told me the same thing in school. It disappointed them fierce when I turned them down. I knew even at 14 I wanted no part of spending my days meeting with mourning folk who'd lost their family. I only do this for folks I know deserve it. Your John is one of 'em. Barthou took his hat off. Mamma opened her sweater a bit, took her wand out, stepped away from my one-armed embrace, and looked at the house. She opened the windows with a swish and pointed it steadily at the upstairs window. Slowly my father drifted out the window, above us, and hovered over the tomb's open top, wrapped tightly in white linen sheets. Barthou began. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be his name. His kingdom come, his will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Give us our daily bread, and lead us beside still waters. Lead us not into temptation, for thine is the kingdom and glory forever. Amen. Good enough, I thought. The help this man has been to us will be forever a gift. What would Mother and I have done had he not come to share sorrow, but only to perform professional duties? I was so grateful. Mamma lowered him gently in, her arm shaking as he settled, and stopped, and she started crying again now. I went to her and held her in a big hug. Barthou waved his wand a bit, and a heavy, ornate lid lifted from behind it, adorned with roses, ringed in small, horny toads. He glanced at us. I nodded, and he lowered it silently into place. Bandos howled again, and this time, coyotes in the distance answered. We went back inside, and I made sure Mamma's bed was made up while she sat downstairs, thanking all three of them for everything. She came in as I finished, and I got her tucked in. Love you, Mamma. See you in the morning. You too, little frog. I'm so glad you were here. All of you. Me too. I would have been sick if all this had happened and I wasn't able to make it in time. Good night, son. Good night, Mamma. The others were waiting downstairs. I nodded and everyone headed off to bed. Bandos went upstairs, nosed Mamma's door open, and lay on the floor right next to her bed, and I went to bed as well. The next morning I got up late. I had no idea what time it was, so I checked my pocket watch on the nightstand. 9:30. Good grief. Guess I was exhausted, and understandably, I suppose. I could smell that breakfast was already cold. Everyone was out front. I dressed and went downstairs to the kitchen table, where I had scrambled eggs, biscuits, and gravy. I was so hungry, I sat and ate it cold. The coffee was hot and great. I wiped my mouth on my sleeve, since Mom was outside, and went on out with them. Morning, boy. Doing okay? Barthou asked. Yes, sir, and thank you to whoever cooked breakfast and left me a plate. Artyrus made it, and did pretty well with his first gravy for biscuits, I'd say, Mamma said. Indeed he did. I gave him a big smile. Son, I've a few rangers and a few in training gonna show up here any minute so we can get these prisoners out of here today, he said, pointing at Wormwell. When we head out, y'all go ahead and close that up for good, will ya? Yeah, there's no love lost with that being shut up with us. I looked at Mamma, who was nodding thoughtfully. Oh, guess what, son? Mamma was excited. Bandos has decided to stay here permanently. She gave his big panting head a good rub. That's great. That makes me happy for both of you, I said. Father, most of all, will be glad he is staying. I'm sure of that. A moment later, 16 fellows appeared, each more scroungy and worn out than the next. Dirty, scrawny, hungry-looking. I couldn't tell which were the Rangers from the rest. Barthou went over to the one on the far left of the group and was handed a small wooden box. He brought it over to Mama and opened it up. Inside was a small revolver and 3 more cylinders, set in the cork frame of the box. Ma'am, I had them bring this here special from our gunsmith down in Bayha. I want you to keep it with you, as there ain't nothing it can't handle. This here pistol was made for your hand. Lots of feather, and look here at these. He picked up one after the other of the cylinders, pointing to the words engraved on each. The one in the gun is regular, which'n you might not need. These here are each loaded with sorta one-core steady shells. They can only be used once each shot, but there ain't no magic it can't defeat. We want you safe as can be here at your place. Barthou set it gently into Mama's hands, and turned to the motley gaggle of fellows. All you others who will come here, members this locale, this lady will need checking on any time you're about these parts. That's an order. He surveyed each one's face, making sure they were paying close attention. All righty then. He gave a slight bow and walked over to the front of the prison, unlocking the gate and then the door. I'm going to get these fellas down there and bound up to the prisoners. Then I'll undo the enchantment so we can dislocate from down there and be off. Y'all take care now. I'll be seeing you in a couple of days when we get them all settled at the new place. All right. They proceeded down below, Bandos watching intently as the door closed behind them. Barthou was last to go in, waving his hand at us as he walked away. After about 5 minutes, Bandos flipped his head up sharply as if he was watching something. I looked at Artiris and Mama, and she said, Yes, they're gone. We all sighed at the end of so many things. Mama, have any idea of how you'd like to close the prison? I asked. Yes. Did you know I never stepped foot inside? Not once. I would very much like to open its top and let the light of the sun in, leaving the stairs and cells, but ripping the iron from its place and making something useful of it. Only when green things grow again will I be able to walk where your father had to spend so much of his time, she said, handing me the pistol case Barthou had given her. A more fitting tribute I couldn't imagine. Let the earth, too, heal from the sourness and labor it had undergone in its duty to those souls it shared space with. If we can, please, inspect as closely as possible that cell again, maybe leaving everything intact. We will be as quick as possible, I suggested. No sunlight yet? She asked. No. If something in that cell, or anywhere else, can exist only in the dark, we should be able to find it. Only the cell bars and doors, please, I said. I suppose that's a good idea, she agreed. A wave of her wrist, wand in hand, and the gate and door were gone, clinking and losing a bit of rocky rubble also. And the cell gates came out one at a time from the mouth of the prison, stacked neatly standing next to a stone nearby. You may need to inspect those as well for signs of magic. She was right. Inscriptions would have been impossible to detect from outside the cells, given the darkness. Artiris snapped his fingers and the torches lit. Bandos, checking with Mother first, got a nod and proceeded down with us. He had never been in any of the cells either, and was more than excited to explore everything. I followed them in, double-checking what I had seen before and examining areas I had missed more closely, as I had been concerned about the population. Literally nothing other than tally counts, scratched in cells, curses, and scribblings, which made no sense to me. In the cell with the small ball of roots on the sleeping cove, the formation had shrunk somewhat and retracted toward the ceiling, hanging about 6 inches above the flat surface and bed. I wondered if my father ever told the prisoners that every one of the pillows and blankets they used to sleep on, the mandated stone slab, was made by my mother. Each one had been worn through in places, some ruined completely, but some, it seemed, had been cared for as the only comfort they were allowed. Once I reached the bottom and found nothing of significance, I went back up and out. Mother had finished carrying the last of the breakfast things into the house and was now coming back out. Bandos emerged first, tail wagging, tongue hanging out the side of his snout, then Artyrus, tucking his monocle away in his chest pocket. "Mother, I think it's all right to go ahead and open it up, and we can maybe go speak with Father Callias, if you are all right alone here for most of the day," I said, loud enough for her to hear. "I think I am ready. Let me sit at the table here and begin. Oh, and I won't be alone. Pandos will be with me." She sat on the bench closest to the entrance, and back to the table, sat quite straight, thinking. She drew her wand, eliciting a slight smile from the corner of her mouth, and circled it several times in the air, pointing towards a top capstone that covered the entire winding cylindrical structure below. The stones and slabs all rose above, slowly rotating as they did, until a great mass was collected in the air. She directed it all to the left of the opening her work had created below, and allowed it to settle among the stone plates and columns that made up the labyrinth around our home in our little dell. That created a rise of solid rock and earth on the eastern perimeter of the old prison site. Then she brought in several tons of good, dark earth, weathered wear from the stones mostly, and created a bed high enough to collect the early sun as it rose each morning. Another few conductions of her skilled wand and felled trees lying around our land assembled themselves into a large box-like structure of framing around the whole plot of new earth. "I will plant some of the varieties you send me, son, from all your work abroad. Some ivies and honeysuckle on the edge of the well should climb down and bring bees and beauty into the depths as a start." She smiled at her own work, quite pleased, and began again. More good earth swirled around the top of the well, drawn from all around us until it, too, was in great quantity, then separated out into individual and equal streams enough for each cell below to fill the floors of all of them a foot deep. She stopped and set her hands on her knees, smiling and looking around. How about this?" She lifted her wand hand again, and speaking a spell I don't remember hearing before, great balls of hot orange glass appeared, brilliant in the sunlight high up. One at a time, each one was drawn out into a square, a rectangle, or a round sheet. They began to have brass bars gather onto their edges and then drop singly into a frame shaped like a dome to cover the garden above, becoming the new top of the well. A beautiful cut glass and leaded crystal door with a rounded top assembled itself and sat gently into a frame facing us. Mother grinned, tight-lipped, as big as she could, and glanced at us. There was but one thing we could do. Applaud. As we did, the grin exploded into a smile, and she covered her mouth with her wand in hand as she giggled. It truly was beautiful, brilliant in the light, and a perfect way to let the place heal from the prison, allowing her to enjoy the space. Had Father still been here, even he wouldn't have given her something so fantastic in that place. "That is amazing," It is indeed an incredible structure, and honors both of you quite well, Mamma, I told her. Indeed, ma'am. Some of the arboretums in Europe are not nearly as grand, Artera stated plainly, also surveying it in amazement. Is it all right if I begin preparing to go visit Father Callias, Mother? I asked. Yes, yes. I really need him to know about John, but I don't want you boys out after dark. I don't want to be here alone after dark either, she said. We went to saddle the horses and fill the canteens, packing a bit of extra alfalfa and oats as well, just in case. It wasn't wise to travel any distance away from the protection of our homestead without being ready to survive a couple of days. We checked our pistols and revolvers, giving them a thorough once-over to ensure all parts were tight, sights were adjusted correctly, and extra balls, powder, caps, and wadding were easily accessible. Mama brought out 3 round loaves of fresh sourdough, making sure I knew one was for Father Callias. Artyrus and I called our owls and sent them both to fly ahead and wait for us about halfway there. After giving Mother a big hug, making sure she was all right for the day, we started up and out of the rock maze and through the stand of trees that concealed us, passing the shimmer wall of the dome, and out towards the west, where the mission was. It was typically hot for this time of year on the plains ahead of us, and mirages danced among the grasses, standing dead still in the cloudless heat. Our owls circled back once and screeched at us, probably decided between them to come check on us, and went on ahead. I had visited this mission before, with my father, but it was many years ago, when a different priest was in charge. I don't remember his name. So I rode in front and stopped only occasionally for a drink of water. The ride was a little more than an hour in this heat, staying in the prairies that rolled up and down, with the stands of woods to the north on our right. About 3/4 of an hour or so, I caught the stench of a rattlesnake, which even for me is rare. I had only detected them under 2 circumstances: if they had just shed their skin, or had dropped scat. I eased up on the reins, and we both came to a stop. I raised my hand so Artyrus might stay quiet, and we could hear it in the grass. Not a minute later I detected it, but he couldn't, as it was close to 100 feet ahead, going left to right across the path we were riding. Once I knew it was far enough off, I put my hand down and told him what had happened. Not wise to let a horse wander up and startle one. You might get thrown off and right into striking distance of the snake itself. Additionally, there is no way of knowing if anyone is watching us, so using magic to dispatch it or firing on it can both draw unwanted attention. Not 5 minutes later, my nose caught something else. From the north, I was pretty sure. Hogs. Domestic pigs who were unwell, maybe mistreated or underfed. And a very sick human woman. There had to be a small home or something up in the trees, but since I couldn't detect the odors of any other people, I decided to tell Artyrus and investigate. A woman fighting illness alone out here isn't to be abandoned to chance when possible. Hello, hello. Okay, there we go. Chapter 7 is complete. How y'all doing? Having a great night? Enjoying the read? Of course, we'll get into the next chapter here momentarily, when it is time for us to do so. That time is coming fairly quickly, I think, but we are not quite there yet. What are you going to do, all right? As always, if you guys have any questions, comments, anything else, please feel free to throw it in the chats across any of the various platforms that you might happen to be on. Whether that is, let's see, YouTube, Kick, X, Twitch, YouTube, Rumble, and TikTok today. Yay, all the platforms. We're across all the platforms. So, If you have any questions, comments, anything else, please feel free to bring them forward. If not, we will find ourselves right smack dab in the middle of our next chapter. I'm going to drink something, though, because I have a little tickle in my throat, which is fun when you're trying to record audio. As always, if you guys have missed any part of this, I will be posting the recordings of the chapters up on YouTube and Rumble later this evening. Now that I have my fiber optic internet in the house, it should actually go fairly quickly. We can only hope, right? All right, everybody. As I'm not seeing any questions, comments, or anything else, let's go ahead and get ourselves started into the next chapter. Let's see, we're about just over 45 minutes in, depending on how long chapter 8 is. We'll either stop on chapter 8 if we've had about an hour and a half, or we'll go on to chapter 9. Again, if you have not done so, make sure you stop out and give the author some love. You can check him out on YouTube. You can check him out on Amazon or on his website, Tellafrog.com. And now, it's time for us to reach Chapter 8. Artyrus, I could tell there is a lady in some physical distress of some kind, and perhaps livestock also not being tended nearby. I really think we should check on it, I said, as I turned my horse into the stand of wood and off our current path. On these matters, sir, I trust you. Right behind you. He followed. Can you call the owls? I will try to focus on anything else I can determine as we get closer. We may need to send word about what we find as soon as we can. Of course. He whistled several times and then remained quiet, waiting for them to catch up. We went along a single path, made presumably from foot traffic, as I didn't discern any hoof prints or cart ruts. The dry grass was beaten down, which was clearly visible. The path wound through the sage and brush up against the tree line, and continued into it, with unbroken leaves and pine needles already fallen on the path from the summer heat. That may have been indication that nobody had been down this path in a few days. After a few hundred yards, the trees changed to small ash, elm, some birches, and even a few small water oaks. Off to the left, the ground was better watered, perhaps by a small spring in a layer of rock on higher ground. I knew that to the north of this stand of trees was higher ground, and though I hadn't been in here before, somewhere close was likely a sharp rise to a low bluff. It was perhaps 15 to 20 minutes of winding our way up, and I could see the rise beneath the canopy of the trees. Then the white, chalky rock outlines from ground level up into the height of the branches. I followed my nose off to the right a bit, and the bluff did indeed come into full view, making a semicircle shape in front of us, maybe 200 feet in width. As we walked into a small clearing, my senses detected a trickle of running water on the left. In the clearing was a dugout on the left inside the semicircle, with a sawed block front, and a couple of chickens walking around. On the right side and slightly downhill from the dugout was a pig pen alongside a small shed with a corn crib on its far right end, which was empty. Two scrawny, filthy pigs in the pen, the ground of which was surprisingly muddy, but also caked in waste. The stench of the sickly woman was coming from inside the dugout. "Anyone home? Hello? 2 men are coming in. We don't mean anyone trouble. Hello!" I yelled. Best to announce yourself as a stranger to a small place with only one lady present, I knew. No response. I looked around again and listened intently. I couldn't determine anything from the ambient odors either. With no breeze outside, the air was dead still here. "Artyrus, would you mind taking the horses off to the left to check if there's a little spring somewhere for the horses to get a drink?" Yes, just be careful, he replied. I climbed down and took my pistol out, handing him the reins. I walked slowly to the opening of the dugout and used my pistol's barrel to push away the old wool blanket they were using as a door so I could look inside. I didn't see any windows or other openings. At the back left-hand side of this little space was a double-wide bed with what looked like the lady I had detected. She was clothed, had a burlap apron, and was propped up against the chalk rock wall, with one leg on the bed and the other hanging off, touching the floor. Ma'am? I asked, knowing already that what I was looking at was a deceased lady. There's something about the way a corpse rests that is always a bit unnatural, and it was here for certain. I looked around and there wasn't anything out of the ordinary. A small table and a couple of chairs, a small cabinet, a tiny wood stove, more of a box, really, with a chimney pipe that was all crooked and had leaks at the joints. A lantern sat on the table, and a small pile of enameled dishes sat uncleaned in a large iron pot on top of the stove. Not a single thing of value, really, a robber might want. I went to the lady, who was holding a fly swatter in her hand, under a fold of the apron. I went to examine the fly swatter handle because it was as black as tar, which may be due to its continued use, as grease and sweat ground against the wood. But I was drawn to check it. I lifted the single fold of the apron, and her hand was black as well, with tiny strands of it reaching up the wrist, almost as if it had been burned, like the spots of a hen turned on a spit. It was similar to the marks my father had, but less viscous, maybe. I took the fly swatter and walked back outside. I went to the pig pen and looked in. The pigs were sort of, well, dancing almost, as if it was hurting them to stand on the ground in certain places. Since there was no one to feed them now, and no food for me to give them, they had no reason to stay here at all. I opened the gate, found a piece of a tree branch 3 or so feet long, and swatted their behinds until they ran out of the gate and into the woods. They'd be fine out there. This freshwater runoff from around here somewhere will keep them healthy and happy with acorns to fill their stomachs nicely. I went over to where Artyrus was with the horses and told him what I found. "Here, take a look at this with your monocle," I said, handing him the fly swatter. "The lady inside is deceased. I'm going to try and block off that doorway and close her inside so the pigs and coyotes don't abuse her until we can return this evening and bury her properly." "I left the monocle with your mother, in case she had an opportunity to examine those gates from the prison or anything else she wanted to have a better look at," he said, sticking the fly swatter into his saddlebag. "All right. I'll close it up. We can handle this on the way home." So I went and found a bench to cover the doorway, and stacked a few heavy chunks of the white rock and a wheelbarrow to try and keep varmints out for a few more hours. We were in and out in less than 30 minutes, back on the road to the mission with no further incidents. The route from there to the mission became more well-worn by cart and foot traffic as we approached the flat, open location where the mission was situated. There were a few trees around the outside, especially on the western side of the wall. Those few pines were tall and probably allowed to grow to block the afternoon sun from entering the compound. It had an 8-foot-high brick wall covered in adobe mud, but most of it had worn off over time and weather, exposing brick and the straw used to make them. We viewed the top of the old sanctuary, and it looked the same as I remembered. There was a bell in the wooden frame tower, and I could see the odd timber sticking up along the walls, likely from small buildings or lean-tos built against the interior wall that circled the whole perimeter. The main entrance facing us was an arched doorway 10 feet tall, with the post oak framing a foot square holding the double doors. The doors were in poor shape, very old and worn, originally a 2-inch thick plank, but now splayed and cracked, held together with flat iron bars. We stopped at the hitching post to the right of the doors, checking to see if the water trough had any water in it. There was only a few inches of water, and it was relatively clean, so we tied up the horses and went to the front door. McCourt and Cat came and lit on the wall in front of the horses, then jumped down into the trough and also got a drink. "Why are the doors closed in the middle of the day, I wonder?" Artyrus asked. "I'm not sure. Perhaps not a good sign," I confirmed. We both drew our pistols in anticipation of trouble. Artyrus went to the left side of the double doors, and I stayed on the right side. A round iron bar extended from the doorframe out about shoulder height, with a rope hanging from it, tied off with a knot at the end. I looked, and it was pinned to the wall. On the inside, at the end of the bar, was a small bell. I peered through the poorly maintained wood slats of the door and tried to see anything I could. There was nothing, and no one. I reached for the rope and rang the bell, keeping my eye between the boards, watching to see if anyone was stirring. Waiting a polite amount of time, I gave it another, longer ring. I also couldn't smell anyone, but the lack of wind wasn't helping. The only breeze was blowing from us into the compound. Now I heard some shuffling which seemed to be coming from behind the chapel's left side. I spotted small animal sheds, hay storage areas, and a couple of small garden plots scattered around the courtyard. The tomatoes and jalapenos, as well as the okra and beans, were also dry and yellow, likely too far gone to bring back now. Puffs of dust began drifting from the back of the chapel now, and a priest appeared, shuffling slowly towards the gate. He had dark brown hair, unkempt, had dust on his black robes, and was shielding his eyes from the bright sun. He approached the gate, placed one hand on the horizontal bar latch, the other still blocking the sun. "How can I help you, men?" he asked. "Father Callias?" I asked. "Yes. I am Renew Tellafrog. This is Artyrus. May we come in?" He lowered his head, thinking for a moment. Tella. Oh, John's son. Yes, please." He fumbled weakly with the latch, trying to unbolt the door, finally succeeding, holding the door open for us and closing and latching it again behind us. "Please, follow me inside out of the sun," he said, and went into the chapel with the same strange gait he had come to the gate with. We entered the chapel, which I remembered had a few windows and stained glass, but all were gone. The frame still clung to shards of glass, some of which lay broken on the ground, both outside and inside. Dust and leaves had blown in and lay everywhere inside. That was strange. I know that none of the children who live around here ever wore shoes. No one would leave all the broken plate glass lying around. The priest went in and sat down in about 2 rows of pews, slumped over. We both stood at the back of the room, near the entrance. "Please, I apologize for not visiting your parents in the last couple of weeks." He appeared quite out of breath, and he was beginning to appear weaker and weaker. He wasn't much older than I was, and all the priests in these missions are always sturdy, hard-working, self-sufficient men. "Father, where is everybody? Why are the gates locked in the middle of the day?" Father Callias seemed to fall asleep as I finished asking. Being midday, the direct sunlight was overhead, none coming in the windows, and it was quite dark inside. My eyes might not adjust for a few more minutes, but he was acting like he had some physical problems. He just shook his head. No. Is there something I can do for you?" His eyes were still closed. "Father, we came to check on you and see if everything was all right. My father was very ill and has just passed away. Mother mentioned you had not visited in a couple of weeks, so we wanted to see if you were as sick as well." I walked over to him, knelt beside him, trying to look at his face. He had dark, bruised patches that were swollen, and one eye was swollen almost shut, with black discoloration surrounding it. He wasn't falling asleep. He was having trouble keeping his eyes open from swelling. We also came across a lady about halfway here in some woods. She, too, had passed on. Oh my God! Oh my God! I have failed everyone! He began wailing, crying uncontrollably, rocking back and forth, his puffy, bruised hands alternating between his face and his knees. I looked at Artyrus, stood, and put my hand on Father Callias's shoulder. He kept rocking and crying aloud, now in Spanish. While I waited for him to calm himself, I looked around the room more closely. Several of the front pews were broken and knocked over. The doors on the confessional were ripped off the hinges with splinters still hanging on. Something had obviously happened here. Please, gentlemen, I must lie down. Please. Can you help me to my quarters behind the chapel? He stood feebly, grasping my arm and walking down the center aisle towards the door to the front left of the pulpit. As soon as we stepped outside the door near the back of the chapel, I caught the scent of dead people. Buried, but the outgassing of dead bodies was distinct. We made our way out of the doorway, then to the right, and around to the small structure attached to the back of the chapel. We took him inside and sat him on the small bed. I am so sorry I couldn't be there for your parents, Ray Lanou. I am so sorry. Your father was one of my best friends, he managed to say, while wiping tears and such with a handkerchief from his nightstand. Father, where are the other priests? Why are the gates closed? What happened here? I tried again. He sniffled a couple of times, clearing his face again and again, trying to muster the courage to tell me. Artyrus and I found some chairs and sat down to wait for him to compose himself. Whatever it was severe. This land was unforgiving. It would be so hot that even ants would seek shade in the heat of August. Every few winters, crippling ice storms would coat everything in ice like a layer of glass. The weight of the ice disfigures every tree it touches. Sometimes, even wells whose surface was 30 feet below grade would freeze a foot thick in winters. The Apache, the Comanche, the Mexican army's defeat, bandits, dust storms, crop failure, all of it makes for hard folk. And something has clearly broken this man. Bandits came a couple of weeks ago. They were renegade Mexican soldiers. They demanded we give them everything we had. We did. They left for a day but returned, having found cases of alcohol on a wagon somewhere. All of them were drunk and furious. Father Callias was weeping, suffering through the ragged stuttering that happens when you try to take a deep breath during a hard cry. They tried to blame us for having lost the war, saying we took the side of the Texians and helped them. We told them we help every one of God's children, and Jesus said to respect the government, whoever that may be. I said that to them. I did this. It's all my fault. He fell across the bed with unbearable physical and emotional pain, moaning. I tried to help, but just saying that enraged them. They tore apart the church. They threw a dead dog into our well. They beat all of us with boards. And then their leader decided the best way to punish me was to kill all the other priests. All 4! He pushed his face deep into the pillow, screaming. The pressure in his face from the beating, the crying, and the screaming was hard to look at. After a few minutes of deep breathing, his attitude changed somewhat, from sorrow and pain to anger. He sat back up, distorted face now wanting to say more. He cut their throats and made me watch while I was tied to a tree right outside. He pointed vaguely out the little window in his room. They all died because of me. Even Digger and Mary Loggins now also. That's who you came across, I am sure, on your way here. Oh! You mean the lady we found in the woods in the dugout? Was there a man also? We didn't find him. Maybe he—" I tried to ask. "No, no, I'm sure they're both dead. I did that. Oh, no, no, no," he cried. "Digger came here 10 days ago. He told me the bandits had been at his house and stole his money and most of his pigs, and tied his wife up on a bench outside and tied Digger in the pig pen. They made him watch them all violate her. I tried to counsel him, but the horror, I don't know how either survived." Father Callius was in pain from the stretched skin in places all over his body, cracked and broken bones, and through the misshapen face his eyes showed resolute anger. "The soldados were drunk and left most of them tied up, probably thinking they'd die. Digger got free and freed his wife and came here demanding I send for help to catch these monsters." His lower lip was quivering uncontrollably between sentences. "I did send word with a local Auvergne boy. They caught him, and finding the message, they came back with rage and did all this. Beaten, and I'm sure my right hand is broken, several ribs, and a couple of bones in my left foot. Took me 3 days to bury my brother priests here. When I went outside the walls on the front of our mission, I found the orphan boy messenger tied to the big pine, dead also. Then I had one more grave to dig. And now I learn your father has also died. Oh, I am so low, so low." He adjusted on the bed in a somewhat normal posture, breathing deeply as he cried, and still shuddering from the images we all create in our minds, retelling terrible events. "Oh, Father, I am so sorry." That was about the most terrible series of events I had ever heard. He covered his face with his hands, and one was indeed quite swollen compared to the other, seeing them close together now. "Is there anything we can do to help?" "I don't know. There's no mission here. Nothing but me. And I caused all of this," he moaned. "Father, that is not true. You gave to those in need. You spoke the truth, as God commands us all to do. We are never responsible for the actions of evil men, regardless of our proximity to them. He allows free will, and these evils are ones these men must contend with God over, not you." I went and knelt in front of him. I wanted him to understand I meant what I was saying to him. "Your brothers in service, the young boy, all are with him now, and you know that. I find no fault in what you have done here. The only other courses of action you imagine would not have swayed men in such a state of mind any other way. Surely you know this. Please, our God is forgiveness, and this land needs their priest. Isn't there a mission east of here that we can contact to promptly send you aid and help?" I attempted to comfort him with things that are hard to grasp through pain and broken bones. He thought for a minute, lowered his hands from his face, and said, "Yes. In fact, you might send an owl. There is a priest who can take confession from magical people. He arrived from Portugal last year. His name is, Lorenzo. I would let you use a pigeon, but they killed all of ours after they found the boy carrying my message about them. That is a large mission, 15 miles due east. He can receive your owl. You will understand." His breathing had calmed a bit. His tears had slowed. He wanted to come out from behind his grief, but the reflections of what he had lived through were still clouding his view of the world. "All right. I will write to him now. I'll get you some water. Mama made you some bread, too. You rest and eat when you can. We will do what we can around here and help." but I don't want Mama to be left all alone at night, so we won't stay too long," I told him. We stepped outside, and I asked Artyrus to give the bread from Mama to him, and if he was certain no one was looking, to use his wand to clean the dog carcass out of the well and make sure it was drinkable again. He agreed and set off to attend to those things. From outside the door I asked loud enough for the priest to hear, "Do you have some paper, a pen, and ink?" Yes, the door to your right on the back of the chapel building. It goes to the basement where the scriptorium is, where we do our writing. You will find some on the big desk," he explained. "All right, I'll be right back," I said, and I found the door and went downstairs. It was indeed right below the floor of the sanctuary. The big wood beams on this room's ceiling were the floor framing for the area above. The wall to the left was lined with a desktop covered in writing materials, and a small wooden rack, extending from that surface to the ceiling, held manuscripts and rolls of paper. Directly across from the stairway were floor-to-ceiling wardrobe-like cabinets that ran along the right side wall as well. They were not all the same. Some were old, some were new, and they had different styles. Likely gifts from locals over the decades, or maybe new parish leaders had ones they brought with them. They fit fairly tightly against each other, except that the last one on the right side was slightly too wide and sat at a slight diagonal, which was probably the best way it could fit. I am guilty of making things that don't fit from time to time, so judgment withheld with a smile. I found the necessary writing materials and wrote a brief letter explaining the events as politely as possible, emphasizing that Father Callius needed help as soon as they could manage. I addressed it to Father Lorenzo and went back upstairs to call McCourt. Artyrus was coming back in the front gate and brought all the canteens as well with him. I called my owl, wound the message tight to the leg, tied it with a burlap string, and sent him off. He wouldn't make it back until nightfall from that far away. "Here, you take this to the father. I'll start on the well if that's all right." Artyrus handed me everything. I nodded, and we went to our tasks. Father, do you have any jugs I can put this clean water in for you? I have also sent a message out to Father Lorenzo. He will have it tonight." I sat down in the chair and unwrapped the cheesecloth from the sourdough loaf, breaking off a piece and handing it to him. "I do, in the shed by the well." He ate from the handful of bread and took a big drink of the canteen water. "A family came for Mass the day after I finished burying everyone. They saw what had happened and returned the next day with a full barrel of water. It's all I've had." "None of us are meant to live this life alone, Father. We will return and assist in getting your mission back up and running. Don't try to do too much. Rest and heal up. I bet there will be help from Father Lorenzo's parish in a week or two." The bread and as much water as he wanted were well received. He must have been rationing the water he had, and he was eating one bite of bread and a long drink of water as fast as his sore face would allow. "Also, you should know that those bandits were seen arrested and being escorted by Texian Rangers a couple of days ago. They aren't going to be causing any more trouble." I stayed with him for about 15 minutes, just in quiet company. When he had eaten half of the large round of sourdough, he gently let his body relax onto the bed. "Thank you for the food, Fray Lanou. God is good." Smiling, I stood up and went outside with Artyrus. He had finished clearing the filth out of the well and had also filled the barrel again with new water. He was near a mimosa tree at the front of the compound, squatting down and looking at the ground around its base. "You all done?" I hollered. "Yes, are we ready to leave now?" he asked, standing still, looking at the ground, then walking towards me to the entrance. "He should be okay. I told him about you spotting the bandits having been apprehended and escorted out of the region." "Fray Lanou!" Father Callios yelled for me. He was standing in the doorway, leaning against it, and seemed to be standing a bit more erect than I had seen him before, even smiling a bit. Leave the front gate open if you would. Smiling back, I gave him a wave, and we untied the horses and turned to leave, knowing he already felt better none of those troublemakers would be around. We proceeded to the Logginses' place, and I went to remove the barricade I had erected to keep trouble away from her. Our tears went into the flat area west of the indentation where their dugout was located. The water runoff fed the ground, and with the shade of the trees and an abundance of beautiful green ryegrass, it was a peaceful scene. There wasn't any scrubby underbrush or thorn vines, so he began to dig a proper grave for her with his wand. I went inside to wrap her up and try to find anything personal I could place with her to rest. She was quite stiff and foul from the heat, I'm sure. Her passing had left waste on her clothes and bedsheets, so I used them to wrap her and went across the yard to fetch the wheelbarrow. I set her in it gently and went back inside to check for personal items that should be buried with her. Sadly, there was but one folding picture frame of a man and a woman painted in it, but I don't know if it was them, or one of their parents, or even siblings. I couldn't tell. But it was the only thing I found. I set it on her and went to where Artyrus had finished his work. Would you please lower her in? It would be undignified if I did it. Of course. He directed her up with his wand, and slowly over and down into her grave. He looked all around again and began letting the dirt fill the hole. He had also removed a stack of the white rock from the bluff's edge and stacked it nearby. Wait, Father Callios told me their names. Let me fetch a few bits of wood and make them a proper marker. So I went back to the collection of crates and things near the house, but couldn't find any boards big enough for me to carve legibly on. Well, I thought, those split rails around the pig pen have no further use, so I'll use those. So I forced apart a few pieces and was searching through the junk outside for a saw. I was in front of the dugout's door and turned to look at the corn crib. Maybe it, being roofed to keep the corn dry, had saws and other tools to keep them out of the rain. That's when, in my periphery, I spotted something bright white in the pig pen. It had been mainly under the muck, but when I pulled down one of the fence posts, it must have revealed it. I went straight to it, afraid of what it presumably was. It was the bare top of a human skull. "Artyrus, can you come here?" I yelled loudly, and I couldn't take my eyes off it. He calmly walked over and stopped dead in his tracks when it came into view. "Is that—" "Yes, it may be her husband. Can you lift him from the pig pen so we can see if it is?" "Yes, stand back a bit, please." He made a small cross shape and a small circle with his wand, and the body began to rise. It was all in the same place, but not all in one piece. Clothes colored with pig filth clung to what was left of him, and most of the meat rotted and was trampled. The bare top of the skull was the only part exposed. Right away I wondered why I couldn't smell him before now. Far bigger things to consider than this, though, so we took him also slowly, along with the rails I had to the side of the first grave. "Let me do the grave and some markers. I don't want to linger here any longer than needed," Artyrus stated firmly. I was about to argue. He set about making the matching hole, lowered the remains of the man in, and I used the wool blanket from the doorway to cover him. Artyrus filled it in, placed the stones, and in a hurry had the markers made and placed. Setting another layer of large, heavy stones on top, we finished, washed up in the trickle from the rocks, and got back on the horses. "Remember when the hogs were in the pen? I think that's why they were dancing, or stepping carefully, or whatever I observed earlier. They didn't want to step on him. You may not know this, but even domestic pigs, especially scrawny ones, won't blink twice to find a meal wherever they can. They didn't. They didn't even want to step on him. Also, I couldn't smell him. I only mention it so that when you are able to speak to the professor, you should mention it, and have a good look at the lady's fly swatter when you speak with him. This is a wild place. It is also vast. I can barely understand how people from European nations would want to come here. In this place are dangers that I cannot fully comprehend, he said. You honestly don't understand? I asked. No, sir, I do not. This small cove, in that stand of young trees, I pointed back to them, far from anywhere, was theirs. They shared none of the fruits of their labors with any noble. Every single thing they bought or built, repaired or reused belonged to no one else. They had asked no one for permission to plant a field, raise pigs, hunt a rabbit or a deer, and no one had a legal right to take it from them. They had a right to the firearms to try and prevent the atrocity that we witnessed. They lived according to their own priorities, guided by what they could do. They would thrive or perish based solely on their ability to generate food and income through free trade and contracts with others, and to use whatever force they deemed fit to protect the fruits of their own hands. Every one of these little homesteads we cross owes allegiance to no one but each other, and the religion of their choice. I must say, for everyone raised in 2,000-year-old cities, whose entire life is ruled by nobles and royals, what Europeans term commoners, the freedom in all arenas here probably seems like a fantasy. But all men and women who know they are in the image of God and refuse to settle for being called common by other humans stained with the same sins are the ones unafraid to come here, I explained. I suppose so. The industriousness and hearty nature I have seen in my short time surprises me, he said, motioning to me for my special flask. After the work we had done here, it was a fantastic idea. It was so hot that a tar-pitched roof might slide off into a pile. So we enjoyed our fill of glacial runoff water, and it was divine. It took another hour, and we were able to make it back to the homestead just as the sun was setting in amongst the trees now, bright orange and scorching less of the land every minute. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, I hope you have enjoyed this reading of Tellafrog. We got through chapters 7 and 8. If you were enjoying it and you want to check out the rest of it and you haven't already, the original, all the chapters up through here are already on YouTube and Rumble, and chapters 7 and 8 will be on YouTube and Rumble before the night is out. Looking at the week ahead, Thursday, it is Stompy Mech Night. So once again, we will be in Mech Warrior Online, having a little bit of fun, stomping around in some gigantic mechs, and of course, reading Battletech while we wait for matches. 'Cause how much better could that be than playing some games and reading some books? Saturday, we are going to have a special charity stream. Happens to be my birthday this week. So, in honor of my birthday, I am raising money for Project New Hope. If you are on Twitch right now, you can look a little bit farther down on my page and find out more information about it. Everybody else, projectnewhopema.org. They are a military nonprofit supporting military and veterans and giving veterans a place where they can recover with honor. Runs a food bank, does all sorts of stuff for the military and veteran community. Full transparency, I have served on their advisory board for almost a decade. We're raising money for them this Saturday. I hope you guys will come and join, have some fun with me. We're going to read a different book this Saturday. We're going to read The Ice Queen and have some fun with that. Maybe play some games. The stream is definitely gonna start earlier in the day than normal, and we're gonna, go longer maybe, we're gonna go shorter, who knows what it's going to look like. If we finish reading, we may go and play some games. We're just here to have some fun, talk about Project New Hope, and raise some money for them. I hope you guys will come along to join. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your buddies. I'd love to be able to get together some donations for them. Any money that comes into any of my channels that day, by donations or bits or however it comes in, subscriptions, all the like, all of that money goes to Project New Hope 100%. Normally I get 50% of my money from streaming to Project New Hope. That day, it's all of it. So, come along and join with me and help me to raise some money for a great cause. Until those follow-up streams, I hope you have a fantastic week ahead. Again, make sure you stop out there and support the author. Check him out on Amazon and on his website, tellafrog.com. Until I do see you guys again, have a great evening. Stay safe.